Chapter 4 of our textbook is about magazines in the Age of Specialization. In this lecture, we'll start with the early history of magazines and their transformation into the country's first national medium, examine the evolution of modern American magazines, discuss the many types of magazines targeted for specific audiences, explore the organization and economics of magazines, and finally, learn about the role of magazines in a democratic society. What we now know as magazines, a collection of articles, stories, and advertisements published on a weekly or monthly cycle in a smaller tabloid style, has its origins in 17th century Europe. The first political magazine was the Review, published in London from 1704 to 1713. The Review focused on domestic and foreign affairs with opinion-based articles. Two other London magazines, the Tatler and the Spectator, began printing around the same time, offering poetry, politics, and philosophy to London's elite. Because magazines were published less frequently than newspapers, they balanced their news content with pleasurable reading like short stories and poetry. The first publication to use the term magazine was the Gentleman's Magazine, first published in London in 1731. The magazine featured articles reprinted from newspapers, books, and political pamphlets. Across the pond, magazines developed slowly. The colonies lacked a substantial middle class, widespread literacy, and advanced printing technology. The first two magazines were published in Philadelphia in 1741, within 3 days of each other. Andrew Bradford's American Magazine, or A Monthly View of the Political State of the British Colonies, and Benjamin Franklin's General Magazine and Historical Chronicle. Like the partisan newspapers of the time, colonial magazines served politicians, the educated, and the merchant class. However, they also served the wider purpose of conveying colonial leaders' thoughts about the big questions being considered at the time, including how taxation should work, how much self-rule the colonies should have, how indigenous people should be treated, and who should have access to public education. Magazines thus gave a voice to the people who ultimately decided to break away from England and create a new, independent nation. The magazine industry in the newly created United States was fairly unstable from 1800 to 1825. With about 500 periodicals starting and stopping publication during that time. As the century progressed, the idea of specialized magazines, devoted to specific categories of readers, increased in popularity, leading to the creation of religious magazines like Christian Parlor Magazine, literary periodicals such as the Philadelphia Literary Magazine, and professional magazines aimed at particular professions like law and medicine. As specialized magazines caught on, so did general interest publications. The Saturday Evening Post was first published in 1821, aimed at a large national audience. Like most magazines of the time, the Post included a few original essays, but relied primarily on stories reprinted from other sources. The Post eventually began incorporating original news, along with poetry, essays, play reviews, and writings of popular authors. The Post was also the first major magazine to appeal directly to women with a ladies' friend advice column. The idea caught on, with the first magazine directed exclusively to a female audience, Ladies' Magazine, published in 1828. Along with essays and critiques, Ladies' Magazine also advocated for women's education, work, and property rights. Other women's magazines, like the hugely successful Godey's Lady Book, would soon follow. Approaching the 20th century, magazines were well on their way to becoming a mass medium, thanks to increased literacy and publication, faster printing technology, and improvements in mail delivery through rail transportation. In 1825, there were about 100 struggling magazines across the country. By 1850, close to 600 magazines were being regularly published, many of them with national readership. Another reason for the increase in the magazine's popularity was the use of drawings, engravings, woodcuts, and other illustrations by the mid-1850s. During the 1890s, Magazines and newspapers began including photographs with printed articles, launching an entirely new profession, photojournalism. Magazines continued to grow in popularity through the late 1800s. By 1870, there were about 1,200 magazines being produced in the United States. By 1890s, their number was 4,500 and reached 6,000 by 1905. Meanwhile, reduction in postal rates and advances in mass production printing, conveyor systems, assembly lines, and printing press speeds combined to lower production costs and make large circulation national magazines possible. Reduced distribution and production costs allowed publishers to reduce magazine costs, like the penny press of the newspapers. Dropping the prices from 35 cents to a dime allowed those with more modest incomes to afford magazines, and circulation numbers skyrocketed. Also, like their newspaper cousins, magazines began making money through advertising revenue. Advertisers used magazines to capture consumers' attention and build a national marketplace. Magazines had officially arrived at the mass medium stage. In the early 1900s, Americans were moving from the country to the city in search of industrial jobs, while millions were immigrating to the U.S., hoping for new opportunities. Newspaper reporters interested in writing about the social climate turned to magazines, where they could write longer, more analytical stories on corruption in big business and government, problems faced by immigrants, labor conflicts, and race relations. In 1906, President Teddy Roosevelt dubbed these early investigative journalists Muckrakers because they were willing to crawl through society's muck to uncover a story. The president wasn't exactly a fan of muckrakers, but their work played a pivotal role in some much-needed reforms. Exposés in Ladies' Home Journal and Collier's Magazine helped Congress pass the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act of 1906. Other reforms that started in the pages of Cosmopolitan, McClure's, and other magazines were increased government oversight of business, a progressive income tax, and the direct election of U.S. senators. One of the most famous muckrakers was Ida Tarbell, whose 19-part series History of the Standard Oil Company in McClure's Magazine took on John D. Rockefeller's oil monopoly. From the 1920s to the 1950s, general interest magazines gained prominence. These publications were aimed at a broad national audience and covered a wide variety of topics, like recent developments in government, medicine, and society. While about 55 general interest magazines existed in 1920, more than 100 were being published by 1946. A key aspect of these magazines was their use of photographs to augment editorial content. High-quality photos gave general interest magazines a visual advantage over radio, which was the most popular medium of the time. The most popular general interest magazines were the Saturday Evening Post, Time, Reader's Digest, and Life. Acquired by Time magazine publisher Henry Luce in 1936, Life featured extensive photo spreads, and by the end of 1930s had a pass-along readership of more than 17 million, to rival even the most popular national radio programs. Nothing lasts forever, and the general interest magazine began its decline by the end of the 1950s. Increased production costs and postal rates contributed to falling circulation, but the biggest challenge was television. While photojournalism could compete with radio, it was no match for TV. As TV increased in popularity, advertisers began shifting their budgets to the new medium to reach larger audiences for less money. Forced to adapt to TV's presence, the magazine industry responded with the 1953 launch of TV Guide, a national entertainment magazine that published network TV listings and related content. 2 decades later, People magazine's short articles and lots of photographs capitalized on the celebrity-crazed TV culture. As magazines struggled to compete with television, they switched tactics to remain viable. While some general interest magazines still exist, The current trend is highly specialized magazines that appeal to narrow audiences, that entice advertisers looking to reach niche markets. These groups can be defined by any number of criteria, such as profession, lifestyle, gender, age, race, ethnicity, or membership in an organization. The long history of women's magazines proves those targeted to a specific gender can be successful. Among the most read magazines in America today are Better Homes and Gardens, Good Housekeeping, and Ladies' Home Journal. In the 1950s, men's magazines began competing with television by offering audiences something they couldn't get from the small screen: sexually explicit subject matter. Hugh Hefner founded Playboy magazine in 1953. Newer men's magazines like Men's Health and Maxim have broadened their focus to include health and lifestyle, along with titillating photos and stories. Entertainment, leisure, and sports is another big focus of magazine content. Sports Illustrated is the most successful general sports magazine in history, with Rolling Stone and National Geographic and other major contenders in the area. Other niche genres include age-specific, where AARP the magazine and AARP Bulletin are delivered free to AARP's millions of subscribers to make them the two American magazines that are the top by circulation. At the other end of the spectrum are the Boy Scouts' national publication, Boy's Life, as well as 17 magazine. Elite magazines like The New Yorker, which combined literature, criticism, humor, and journalism to highly educated audiences, still reaches more than 1 million subscribers. Magazines targeted at marginalized identity groups have existed since before the Civil War, with Black focus magazines, Essence and Ebony, with circulations of more than 1 million. Other big publications in this group include the women's magazine Latina and People en Español. Trade magazines focus on those working in a specific profession. Titles include Adweek for the advertising industry, Variety for the entertainment industry, and U.S. Banker for U.S. bankers. Originally viewed as the beginning of the end for print magazines, the magazine industry has learned to embrace the internet. Comparing the costs of paper, printing, and postage with the flexibility of the web, mobile devices, and social media, magazines are being distributed in both print and digital formats. Wired magazine, for example, has a print circulation of about 880,000, but with its digital versions, social media pages, and video, it can reach nearly 62 million people monthly. Web and app formats give magazines unlimited space and can allow them to explore media convergence, introducing blogs, videos, podcasts, and games as a part of their brand. Meanwhile, online-only magazines like Salon and Slate have won awards for their coverage to legitimize non-printed publications as places to report breaking news and encourage cultural and political debate. While some smaller magazine staff may work in multiple roles, larger magazines are divided into several departments. The first is the editorial department, who creates all the magazine's content except for its advertisements. Like newspapers, the magazine hierarchy often starts with the publisher, includes an editor-in-chief, managing editor, and section editors, and ends with contributing staff writers and photographers, as well as freelancers, self-employed professionals assigned to cover particular stories. Next is the production and technology department, which maintains the computer and printing hardware needed to produce the magazine, although the actual printing is often outsourced. Next up is the magazine's advertising and sales department, who are responsible for generating the majority of a magazine's revenue. The average magazine contains a 40 to 60 ad to editorial content ratio, which is a smaller news hole than many newspapers strive for. With the digital turn, advertising representatives have gotten more creative, offering opportunities for branded content and paid social media placements to offset declining revenue from print ads. Another way of generating revenue is with special editions. As far back as the 1950s, magazines introduced different editions to guarantee advertisers a specific audience. This can include regional editions, where magazine content is tailored to a specific geographic region. Sports Illustrated, for example, often prints several regional versions of its college football and March Madness preview editions, with different local stars on each cover. In a split-run edition, the editorial content is the same, but some ad pages are reserved for local or regional companies. And demographic editions target groups of consumers by occupation, social class, or zip code. Time magazine, for example, has special editions for high-income zip code areas. Finally, we have the circulation and distribution department. While advertising subsidizes the cost of editorial content, ad rates are set by how many people see the magazine, and that's where circulation and distribution comes in. Currently, about 90% of magazines are sold through subscriptions rather than single copy sales by realtors. One popular tactic to increase subscription rates is the evergreen subscription, one that automatically renews on a credit card unless the subscriber requests otherwise. Another strategy for boosting circulation numbers is controlled circulations, providing readers with the magazine at no cost by targeting captive audiences like airline passengers or association members. Rather than rely on subscription fees, these magazines rely solely on advertising and corporate sponsorship. If that sounds risky, remember the two magazines with the largest circulation, AARP the magazine and AARP Bulletin. They're delivered free to all AARP members. And a 4-color, full-page back cover ad in AARP the magazine can cost more than $1 million. The biggest trend in magazine sales is digital distribution. By 2017, the print and digital editions of magazines accounted for just over half of their total audience. Mobile editions, usually delivered via apps, captured almost 1/3 of impressions, and that number will continue to grow. Just as newspapers are facing increased concentration of ownership, so are magazines. Large and powerful magazine chains allow for more funding for magazines and enable them to lower their costs by centralizing basic functions like content development and production. One of the largest magazine publishers is Meredith Corporation, who in 2020 owned 5 of the top largest circulation magazines: Better Homes and Gardens, People, Southern Living, Shape, and Parents. The Hearst Corporation, meanwhile, owns such giants as Good Housekeeping, Women's Day, Cosmopolitan, and Oprah's O magazine. And Condé Nast publishes only one of the largest magazines, Glamour, but still has an impressive portfolio, including Bon Appetit, GQ, Vogue, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, and Wired. Specialization of the magazine industry means they no longer have a powerful national voice, uniting communities on important political and social issues. While they still provide essential information to help readers form opinions, magazines have been criticized for their increasing dependence on advertising revenue. Some publications view their readers as consumers first, eyes to be sold to advertisers, and citizens second. Magazine editors can face ethical dilemmas, balancing the public's right to know with a story that is unflattering to a major advertiser, that can result in stories being cut from publication rather than risk losing advertising dollars. Yet magazines do still encourage and contribute to democratic debate. There are more magazines available than broadcast and cable television channels, and many new magazines unite dispersed groups of readers, such as giving cultural minorities or newly arrived immigrants a sense of membership in a broader community. Most importantly, good magazines that offer carefully researched, thoughtfully or entertaining articles and photographs continue to inspire lively discussion among their readers.